Greetings. Happy Friday. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer, with Dan Proft. We are all without Dan Proft today. He will be back on Monday. He is currently chasing the white ball, as he said on yesterday's show. And you are listening to Mike Coolidge. That's me, Koolidge. It's the first time I'm filling in on a Friday, open line Friday. And yes, we will later on be opening up the phone lines to any questions or comments you have at 312-642-5600. But let us talk now about the state of Illinois and the state of Illinois. You know, there's a bunch of different things that could happen this fall after the elections are over. The ideal, great situation is that all of the Republican candidates running win. And we've got a Republican governor and a Republican secretary of state and a Republican comptroller and a Republican treasurer and, heck, a Republican in the U.S. Senate. I know I'm forgetting one. Secretary of State, treasurer, governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general. That's right. Bob Fioretti. That would be awesome. Is that going to happen, or are we going to run the slate? I wouldn't bet on it. But it is not out of the question that we could win a couple of those statewide races, maybe one or two, maybe even three. And one of the ones that I would bet on being successful is the comptroller's race. Yeah. Now, a lot of people don't even know we have a comptroller. Some people call it the comptroller. But it's a really important position. And because no one really pays attention to it, it's not out of the question that a Republican could sneak in, and even be a Republican comptroller if, God forbid, the Democrat character called J.B. Pritzker somehow wins re-election. You could have a Republican comptroller and a Democrat governor. Ideally, it's a Republican governor and a Republican comptroller. But what is the comptroller? What is the purpose of it, and why might it have more power than you think over even, yes, a Democrat governor? Joining us on the phone right now is a man who wants to be your next comptroller, Bryan Drew, Republican from Benton, Illinois. Bryan Drew, welcome on to Chicago's Morning Answer.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Yes. I've met you many times, and everyone I talk with is really impressed with your campaign. You've got a very vibrant and robust social media presence, and you're all over the state all the time with your lovely family. Benton, Illinois is way downstate for those of us in northern Illinois, but that doesn't stop you from making it up to Chicago and to Rockford and to, Rochelle, even in various areas. But let's get into the comptroller's office. Why does it matter more than people realize?
You know, a lot of people don't realize that all this massive government spending that goes on in Illinois flows through that office. And when you look at that office, currently the Democrats hold a supermajority in the legislature, the governor's mansion, and the auditor general. So basically, Illinois has no checks and balances in government spending. And if we're just going to let one party handle it all, why would we even have a comptroller? The comptroller is supposed to be, a watchdog for the taxpayers, not just a simple rubber stamp for government spending.
So what could the comptroller do if he were to see that government spending is completely, off the rails, or even, corrupt, and the courts aren't doing anything about it?
As it relates to, fraud in government contracts, the comptroller has an opportunity to stop that. You can absolutely put a stop to it. When it comes to waste, you get to expose it, and you can show that to all the taxpayers of this state. Here's where your money's going, and they deserve that. Transparency isn't something that's hard to do, but it hasn't been done, and we really need that in Illinois government. The taxpayers work really hard for their money. They should get to know exactly where their money's going.
One of the reasons that a lot of people think that you have a pretty decent shot here is that your opponent isn't really adept at raising money, and she doesn't have the backing of the current comptroller. Tell our listeners why.
Well, the current controller didn't take any campaign dollars from the governor because the controller is supposed to be the check on the governor and the legislature and their spending, to be that check and balance in government. But my opponent has taken the maximum contributions from the governor's office, as well as a lot of people who have contracts and work with the state. And the controller really has to be an independent person, has to be that watchdog, not simply a rubber stamp. And so, my opponent's just not the right person for this job. Not to mention, my opponent was a legislator, voted for all of these budgets, all of the spending, and now says, I want to be the controller, the person to supervise that and talk about how the money's being spent. And that's just not, that's like checking your own homework. That's
right.
She's already approved all the spending. Now she wants to tell you where it's right or wrong. You already approved it. That's not the job. And so that's why I think I'm much more qualified for this job, because I can be that independent check and balance that frankly the taxpayers deserve and really need.
And talk a little bit about your background. You're a trial lawyer. How does that relate to being a good comptroller?
Well, for a lot of people, they look at the controller's office and they say, well, I mean, it's an accounting position, but it's really not. It's an accountability position, because that job really is to supervise the money and where it's going and expose that. And for 25 years, I've been in courtrooms asking a lot of tough questions. And now I'm ready to ask those same tough questions about how Springfield and Chicago spends all of our money. Anyone can cut a check, but the comptroller really has to be that check and balance, that watchdog for the taxpayers.
Yeah, I mean, again, listeners, think about this. Put yourself in the shoes of the Democrat running for comptroller, who is a former legislator and is getting gobs and gobs of money from J.B. Pritzker, who also happens to be running for governor, for re-election. Let's say she somehow makes her way into the comptroller's office, and she all of a sudden, I mean, this reminds me a lot of the Supreme Court justice races we had here a couple of years ago that J.B. Pritzker got involved in and gave money to. How can you be an independent arbiter of what the governor is doing if 5 minutes ago you were taking gobs of cash from said governor, let alone a lot of this extreme and profligate spending that Springfield does, you were a part of. You were part of signing yes and all that. That's what the alternative to Bryan Drew is as comptroller. You are an outsider, right? You're not a legislator. You haven't been in Springfield, and I mean, or are you are you part of this this establishment, Springfield class too, Bryan?
I probably couldn't be farther away. I've never held political office, and I've certainly never been a legislator. And on top of it, my opponent, the opening video, it's been taken down since, but the open video had her saying, I stand with J.B. Pritzker. Now, she took it down because the current controller and all of her opponents bashed her for it, because that's not the job. But no, I couldn't be further away from an insider, especially coming from where I'm coming from. So.
Yeah, again, if I could just speak, because I know there are some Democrats and liberals who listen to this radio program. You're going to get all the Republican votes throughout the whole state. That unfortunately, because of the breakdown of the state of Illinois, won't be enough to put a Republican over the top. Any Republican in a statewide office, if only Republicans vote. If you're a self-respecting Democrat or independent out there, and you're just going to vote the whole ticket Democrat, you love J.B. Pritzker, don't you at least want to have him have a check on him? Don't you want somebody in Springfield to say, hold on, wait a second, $10 million is going to X, or, 50, or $2 billion is going to Y? Like, somebody who is not in the pocket of Springfield, somebody who's not in the pocket of the Democrats, of the teachers unions. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Are you getting massive amounts of money from government unions, Bryan Drew?
I've received no money from any government union.
Okay, good. So you're not on the puppet strings like Brandon Johnson is running for or the current mayor of. Yeah. So honestly, if you have any self-respect for how government is run, regardless of what is next to your name, listeners, consider Bryan Drew for Comptroller. We joked about you being all over the state, you being from super duper southern Illinois, Benton, Illinois, an awesome little town, not much smaller than the town I make my home in, Rochelle. But tell our listeners a little bit about your life and your family and how you found your way to deciding even to run for such an ambitious statewide office like Comptroller.
Well, Mike, I live in Benton with my wife, Kristen, and our 4 children. They're 22, 17, 14, and 13. So, we were very busy down there, have some small businesses. I have my law practice. And I just kept watching how the only thing we ever heard out of Springfield and Chicago and the government was that they need more of our money, that they just don't have enough revenue. And yet we have record revenues every single year. And let's not forget, revenue means tax dollars. And that's just not the case. The fact of the matter is that the problem with government right now is we have out of control spending. We have a spending problem. And that's the Comptroller's office. That's what should happen there. We should get control over that. And we're never going to make life more affordable in Illinois. We're never going to be able to reduce taxes until we get a control on the spending. And, as a taxpayer, have you heard that, there's hundreds of millions of dollars going to a Chinese superconductor factory that the government, that J.B. Pritzker gave out, or that there's billions going to NGOs that are politically connected, people all over Chicago, all over the state? No. And that's what you need to know. People should be knowing that so they can decide, is that a good spending of our money? When you talked about partisan, the Comptroller's office really is the least partisan of all the positions. Mike, when you think about it, when government blows our tax dollars, they're not blowing Democrat or Republican dollars. They're blowing all of our money. And so regardless of what party you're in, shouldn't everyone want a check and balance on government spending? Shouldn't we have just one? And that's what I want to do, and that's what I want to be.
DrewForIllinois.com is the website for Bryan Drew. Affordability, accountability, and transparency. Taxpayers deserve a watchdog who will hold politicians accountable for how they spend our tax dollars. He's not running to be a state senator or a state representative, one of 100 or so in Springfield. The Comptroller's office is directly voted into by you, the voters, just like the other statewide offices are. He's not part of the staff of the governor. He directly answers to the people, and don't you want a watchdog in? I think it just makes sense in general to have the comptroller be somebody who is not in cahoots in any way, shape, or form with the governor. At least the current one attempted to. No offense, Bryan, but I haven't really followed the current office of the current comptroller all that much and all the inner workings of it. But I suspect, that he at least didn't take money from Pritzker is a good sign that he was attempting to be a good watchdog. Your opponent right now is taking it hand over fist and is a former legislator. So, that is a conflict of interest if I've ever seen one. You don't have any of those conflicts of interest. So I think that's definitely a notch on your belt. Is there anything else you'd like to add to our listeners, not just here in the Chicagoland area, but throughout the state of Illinois before we say goodbye?
When you think about this, we've heard for a lot of years that, think about how much revenue they're bringing in, how much money taken in, but do we have more services? Are our roads getting better? Recently they did the CTA bill where they took, a bunch of money of the sales tax, took it away from downstate, which downstate includes everything but the city of Chicago, to prop up the CTA system, which has been run poorly. And what I'd say to everyone is this: Illinois is a great state, and I have been all over it to the tune of about 70,000 miles so far since last August. We burned up one car on the south side of Chicago. I'm actually in Chicago today with some meetings, and I have some events tomorrow. And when you go all over this state, there's great people, there's great industry. We lead the nation in agriculture. We're the crossroads of railroad, of highways. We have everything we need to lead the entire nation. And the only reason we're not is because of government, because of how we're run. That's the only problem with Illinois. And the first way to get control over that and to turn that around is to get control of the spending. And that's what the comptroller is supposed to do. And I'm going to bring that to the state of Illinois. and we desperately need it.
DrewforIllinois.com is the website. Bryan Drew, running to be your next comptroller. Bryan Drew, thanks so much for coming on to AM 560, The Answer.
Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate it.
We'll be right back.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer.
Your show keeps me alive during the week. There's nobody I'd rather listen to between 5 and 9 in the morning than you guys.
On AM 560, The Answer.
Foundations of Freedom, a look at America's founding principles and the leaders who shaped our nation.
In